Ripple just became the only company offering the full financial stack in Brazil. Payments, custody, stablecoins, prime brokerage, treasury management, all under one roof. And they just applied for a license with Brazil's central bank. Meanwhile, Evernorth's chief business officer says XRP is, quote, structural to finance, and adoption in $150 trillion market is, quote, just getting started. Goldman Sachs is holding 150 million in XRP ETFs. But here's the thing. Is XRP the token actually capturing any of this? Let's get into it. So Ripple just dropped one of the biggest announcements of the year, and nobody is talking about it. They're applying for a virtual asset service provider license with Brazil's central bank. And this isn't just a payments play. Ripple is now the only solution in Brazil offering institutions the full spectrum: cross-border payments, digital asset custody, prime brokerage, and treasury management. Nobody else does all of that in the region. Nobody. And they already have 6 major customers live. Banco Genial, one of Brazil's established banks, is using Ripple for same-day USD disbursements and now expanding to RLUSD. Brasa Bank, one of Brazil's largest FX institutions by volume, chose Ripple and even issued a BRL-pegged stablecoin called BBRL directly on the XRP ledger. Nomad serves over 3 million users and is settling treasury flows between Brazil and the US using RLUSD. And then you've got Azify, Atris, Frente Corretora, all processing real money through Ripple's rails. But the custody expansion might be the bigger story. Ripple Custody is entering Brazil with bank-grade security, Chainalysis, and Elliptic for real-time transaction screening. And 2 custody clients are already tokenizing real assets. CRX has settled nearly $100 million on-chain through XRPL. And Just Token, right, has already tokenized over $1.7 billion in assets on XRPL. Natural resources, real-world asset tokenization in Latin America. That's not theoretical, that's live. And RLUSD is the glue holding all of this together. It just passed 1.55 billion in market cap, on track to hit 2 billion within weeks. Mercado Bitcoin, Foxbit, Ripio, Brasa Bank, Banco Genial, all listing RLUSD. B2B cross-border flows through RLUSD are up 733%. Skeptics will say Brazil's VASP framework isn't finalized until 2027, and that's true. Ripple is applying early. But Monica Long, Ripple's president, said it plainly. Quote, Brazil has built one of the most advanced and forward-thinking financial ecosystems in the world. They're not waiting for perfect regulation. They're building while the rules catch up. Now zoom out from Brazil and look at the global picture, because this is where the numbers get hard to argue with. Sagar Shah, Evernorth's chief business officer, sat down for an interview and made one of the clearest institutional cases for XRP I've heard in months. He said, quote, cross-border payments is a market worth over $150 trillion per year, and the existing system is just really poor. They charge 6% just to send maybe a $200 payment across the border. Think about that. 6% on a $200 remittance means $12 vanishes before the recipient sees a cent. Multiply that across trillions in annual flows, and you've got a structural tax on the world's poorest populations. That's not inefficiency, that's extraction. And XRP was built specifically to solve this. settles in 3 to 5 seconds, costs a fraction of a cent per transaction. Ripple's payment corridors now span 55 plus countries, handling over $15 billion in monthly cross-border flows. Total processed volume just crossed 100 billion, and the regulatory barriers are falling. Shah pointed to the Ripple SEC lawsuit being resolved, the Clarity Act advancing in Congress, MiCA live in Europe, Japan and Asia with what he called, quote, advanced and progressive frameworks. That matters because large institutions literally cannot allocate to assets with unresolved legal risk. As that risk gets removed jurisdiction by jurisdiction, the institutional case for XRP gets dramatically easier to make. And the institutional proof points are piling up. Deutsche Bank integrated Ripple infrastructure in February for cross-border transfers, FX, and custody. Societe Generale and Aviva investors also adopted Ripple Rails that same month. 3 major European banks in 1 month. Shah's argument is simple. $150 trillion market, 6% fees, 3-second settlement. The math does the talking. Okay, so the institutional money is actually showing up. Goldman Sachs disclosed holding roughly $150 million in XRP ETFs at the end of 2025. That's not retail. That's one of the world's most influential investment banks putting a 9-figure allocation into XRP. Over $1 billion has flowed into XRP ETFs since the second half of 2025. And Evernorth, the company Shah runs, is building what they're calling the micro-strategy of XRP. They now control over 473 million XRP, worth over $1 billion. Capital commitments from Ripple, SBI Holdings with a $200 million anchor, Pantera Capital, Kraken, GSR. They're planning to list on NASDAQ under ticker XRPN. And their model isn't passive. Unlike an ETF that just holds tokens, Evernorth deploys XRP across the XRPL ecosystem. Institutional lending, liquidity provisioning, DeFi yield strategies. They partnered with T54 Labs to automate the whole thing. They're running validators, contributing to technical standards. CEO Ashish Birla said XRPL's institutional DeFi infrastructure has reached the point where, quote, traditional finance can begin moving on-chain at scale. But here's where I need to be honest with you, because the contrarian case matters. XRP is used as a bridge currency for about 3 seconds per cross-border transaction. It generates activity, not sustained demand. RLUSD, Ripple's own stablecoin, flows through XRPL without requiring anyone to hold XRP. There's a real argument that Ripple's most successful product might be cannibalizing XRP's utility. And XRPL's DeFi total value locked is still around $47 million on a chain with an $84 billion market cap. That's 0.06%. Solana is at 20%, Ethereum at 16%. So the network is being used. The institutions are showing up. But the gap between Ripple the company, which is thriving, and XRP the token, which hasn't captured proportional value, that gap is the real story. Shah says adoption is just getting started. The market says, show me. So look at what happened today. Ripple became the only full-stack crypto provider in Brazil. 6 major institutions are live on their rails. RLUSD is approaching $2 billion in market cap. $150 trillion market is being disrupted at 6% per transfer. Goldman Sachs is in. Evernorth is building $1 billion XRP treasury. The infrastructure story has never been stronger, but the token story, that's still being written. And until XRP captures value proportional to the network being built around it, that's the debate that matters. The adoption might be just getting started. Whether XRP holders benefit from that adoption, different question entirely. If this breakdown helped you understand what Ripple is building right now, hit subscribe. Drop a comment. Is XRP the most undervalued asset in crypto, or is the token disconnected from the infrastructure? I read every single one. See you in the next one.